Hey, how you doing? Today it won't let me start my video camera. I got this on another stream. I was trying to stream from another channel, but it won't let me start my. I don't know what's going on. It's sharing this screen. Let me see that one. Oh man, it won't let me do it for some reason today. Me and Kareem did it yesterday, had no problems. I guess I'm gonna have to turn that one off. This dynamic dad, positive attitude, full of energy and new ideas.
And magnificent moms, realizing, reconciling, realizing.
Turn that window, close that window, lady.
You want me to close my window?
How you doing? This is Dennis Jenkins with Dynamic Dads, positive attitude, full of energy and new ideas. Today I have some guests coming on and we're going to talk about race and parenting.
And this is Josephine Horace Jackson of Magnificent Moms.
And so I wanted to show a video to you guys, which I might still do that, but my guests will be on here in just a few minutes. And we will get started with race and religion, race and parenting. So Josephine, tell me, what is Magnificent Moms about?
Well, Magnificent Moms is about changing the narrative of gatekeepers. Currently, in many cases, women have been given a negative narrative of what a custodial mother is. So, and that is that the mother is right, whatever she says regards to how a dad interacts with their children is always right. And that's not necessarily so. Just because he wasn't a good husband or a good partner, that does not mean that he's not a good dad. So I, along with many of my colleagues and Dennis, endeavor to change that narrative. It's very important that dads are involved in their children's lives. As you can see, the statistics have provided uh, um, essential information to show that the absence of a father in a child's life have negative consequences. So we endeavor to change that. So with Magnificent Moms, we want to first realize that there's a team, a mom and dad team. Just because we don't get along as parents, that shouldn't mean that we can't come together and co-parent. So we must reconcile that fact, and we must also come to the point that our kids matter, and we must put the best interest of our children first. So that will come in various levels: parenting, peace circles, a whole lot of things. Hi.
Hello.
Can you guys give me a second? I was just doing some little things here and I got caught up with Josephine and talk. So we're going to give me 2 more minutes, okay?
Absolutely.
Perfect.
How are you guys doing?
We're doing well. How are you?
I'm great. I am great.
And do you go by Joe or Josephine?
Well, they call me so many things. Mama Joe, Jojo, Josephine, Fiend. I got a lot of nicknames. So which one do you choose?
I think Mama Fee might be my.
Mama Fiend? Well, you got it. See? I got a new one. You done made up a new one. Mama Fiend.
I'm unique like that.
I like it. Because, see, only my relatives at home, they call me Fiend. So, see, you call me Mama Fiend.
There you go.
I love it.
How are you doing, Dennis?
I'm doing awesome. I'm doing awesome. Give me 1 minute. Got
No
caught
problem.
with Josephine having fun, and she got me distracted.
That's okay.
He always blames me for everything. Like I get him distracted. Like he gets me confused with all these time zones. Where are you guys located again?
We're in Los Angeles.
We're the same.
Oh God. Oh, so you and Dennis are in the same time zone.
Where
All
are
right, here
you?
we go. Here we go.
Right.
Once again,
See?
we're here today.
See how he cut me off? See?
Oh, I saw it.
We're here today with Kyle Lawrence, and I forgot your first name.
Oh, come on. No, you got this.
No. Give me a minute.
Oh, because
I'm McCall.
it's only my name on the window.
I see.
Yeah, so I was able to cheat sheet because there was only one name on the window.
My first name is McCall.
McCall. Okay.
Like a phone call from McDonald's.
I know I've been telling that name to my daughter all the last couple of days, and she's like, who's that? That's the last name? So I got her confused on that too. So, but we're here today, Dad and Dad's Positive Attitude, full of energy and new ideas. And today we're going to talk about race and parenting. And so we're going to hear today, get the story of the life of these young couple that's here today, and see how great they are in their parenting skills and how they're developed that into their two young kids. And so today we're going to come on and we're just going to have a great time expressing who they are today and their way and fashion of who they, what their life has been like, especially during this COVID-19 that we've all been dealing with. Okay. So first of all, if you both come in, just tell us a little bit about yourself. Just introduce yourself to the people listening right now.
Well, hi, everybody. My name is Kyle Lawrence, and I was born in California, but I grew up in Dallas, Texas, lived in Texas until I was about 25 when I came back to California, to Los Angeles, where I met my beautiful wife.
We met at work. He dipped his pen in the company ink. And neither of us are still at the company. Actually, the company doesn't even exist
there's
anymore.
no more.
You met at City Search.
That's
we
correct,
did.
yes.
Kind of the precursor to Yelp is what it was.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
And I did sales and he did customer service. And I got commission on any accounts that wanted to cancel that I saved. So anytime somebody wanted to cancel, this handsome guy sent them to me to save.
Well, she was the best. So it was really easy for me to just pass them over to her, and then she could work her magic, and it made everybody look good.
And at that point, we weren't even dating. I didn't know he was interested. He didn't know I was interested. But a mutual friend of ours that also worked there suggested maybe I invite him out to one of the customers that wanted to cancel and tell them that we found them on City Search. So Kyle and I had our first date to save a City Search advertiser.
Wow.
Yeah, that's going back like 15 years.
16, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. But I see also that it says that you guys were filming McCall's band.
Oh yes. So we tell a story to anyone who's interested. One of our first, it's our relationship kind of evolved in this really interesting way where we met in the hallway at work, but McCall doesn't remember it. She doesn't remember this happening.
That's your version, right? This is your version.
Yes, there's the real version and there's the version that she remembers. So we were introduced in the hallway at work by a coworker. Then we officially met at a Halloween party And then a couple of days later, maybe a week later, she was in a band and it was performing at a club here in LA. And I went and actually had a date there with me, kind of. But McCall asked me to film the show, and the girl that I was there with ended up leaving. And later on that night after the show, we just hugged and had this intense hug. And there was something in that moment that was like, it was a bonding, and it really felt like a bonding of our persons in a way that neither of us had ever experienced before
Or since,
obviously. And it was a very long hug, and obviously very intense. And when we separated, I think there was like a change in just who we were as people. And from that moment forward, it was like, okay, it was just a matter of time.
You knew that was your wife.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And to be honest, he doesn't look like the person I thought I was gonna marry.
I don't look
But
like
let
the person.
me also say this though. Let me ask you guys just a few questions about this, because I don't know about you, Carl, but something just didn't sound right here. You came with a date. All of a sudden she left, and you don't know how she left. Did you ever find out why? Because I think somebody else knows why she left there.
Who was that, Brandy?
That was Brandy, yes.
Yeah, I think somebody else knows why she's left, because I think somebody else had their eye on you, and she made sure that person left so they can get to you, because that don't sound too.
It's entirely possible that McCall got her a cab without me knowing.
I will admit that Brandy also worked at City Search, and it wasn't long after that night that I took her out for lunch and pedicures and told her basically, hey, Kyle and I are an item, and thanks for
Back off.
I knew you had something part in this. I didn't want to say it myself. I wanted Kyle. He probably already knew this, but I'm sure he knew you had a hand in this. This was destined. This was fate. So you was gonna make sure you got your man.
Now,
he's the thinker, I'm the doer.
Well, okay. Now, just to be fair to all parties, I also took care of my own side of the street, and I had a separate conversation with her as well, where I was pretty clear. You and I are not going to be a thing, because I'm going to be a thing with McCall, and I'm not sure that I handled it in the best way that I could have. In retrospect, I think I did it the best way I could have in the moment at the time as a 25-year-old.
Yeah. You just spurred them over like, hey, I found the love of my lifetime. Sorry, girl, you got to go. Get out here. Get up, go, shoo. You about to mess this thing up. And McCall, like, I already took care of that. She already, ain't no worry. You say what you got to say. She already know when you go talk to her that you is out of here, sister. I'll take care of you later on. I'll take you out to lunch and I'll explain the whole thing. But tonight, get out of here. Here's some money for the taxi. Skedaddle.
So yeah, that's how it all played out. And from there, that was
October, November.
October, obviously, the Halloween party
November.
was October 31st. The gig was maybe a week later-ish, and then we were married about a year after that. So
I so love that story. I have fallen in love with you guys already. I just feel you guys are emitting such an aura of love, and I don't know. I just feel it all the way over here in Chicago. I am so in love with you guys.
Well,
your personalities, and wow, I'm so excited. Where you been all my life?
We've been around, but mostly here.
Yeah, mostly LA.
Yeah, that's a very touching love story. I seen that first love at first sight kind of say. And so I guess Kyle talked about the biggest hug that he ever got in that emotion in that spiritual moment where all the fireworks went off. I know you've seen the cartoons when they had those magical moments and they come together and it's.
Oh yeah.
So you guys met that utopia, sort of say. You had that moment.
It was one of the most physically intimate experiences I had ever had.
Now this is a PG rated, so we're not going because
no, but I am saying we didn't even.
You guys right in that moment. the whole place shut down and everybody else just disappeared, and you guys had a moment where your two spirits
Exactly.
fused together, and y'all had this climax like wow.
Mhm.
So can you say something spiritual took place, like a knitting of your souls, of your spirits, like you found your rib, she found her rib cage, uh, uh, something of that nature. You didn't know it really, but your spirits knew it.
Oh yeah, my mind was not very accepting of it. He is not who I
He's
imagined.
not
I
right what
believe
you
it.
thought that you wanted,
I mean,
but
since
he is
we're going to be
exactly
talking
what
about
you
race,
needed.
Josephine, since we're going to be talking about race anyway, I'll just be legitimately honest. I grew up in an all Black and partially Hasidic Jewish area in east side of Cleveland, Ohio.
Okay.
Every picture that I drew as a little girl of myself when I was older, I even have one where I was pregnant that I drew when I was probably in like first or second grade. The baby in my belly had dark skin. Just because that's all I knew. That's all I really saw. I saw my grandparents kind of bougie west side of Cleveland that were white yacht club kind of people that I didn't identify in any way. But I didn't think I would at least not marry a typical white man. Like I thought he'd be punk rock or rockabilly or there'd be some tattoos. I don't know. And he's pretty vanilla. Super smart, but pretty vanilla.
Smart guys rock.
Yeah, I see it in your bio. You said you guys were pop culture, religion, and spiritual philosophy, politics. Philosophy and politics. I mean, spiritual philosophy and politics. So, with all that being said, and was that in the beginning? I know this is very like early in the stage of your life, and you're very young. Did those things have any commonality between the two of you that helped the interest?
Wow.
Even though you came from two different backgrounds, it was something that piqued your interest in both of you.
Well, I'll tell you, boy, our spiritual journey, both separate and together, has been really eventful, I guess I would say. So I grew up in a very, I guess, traditional evangelical Christian household. My father was a professor at Dallas Theological Seminary, and that's the environment in which I grew.
He has two brothers. Both of them
went to seminary,
and
one of them
work
is
in church.
Yeah, a teaching pastor at a church. One of them was a pastor of a church for years and years. So when we came together, I was not, I would say, practicing, but I was believing. And she was not in any way. She was like a spiritual seeker, I would say.
Wow.
And we, and kind of in our journey together, we started going to church, and McCall came to a faith that worked for her. And we got married in a church. We were married by my father. He officiated. And we continued to just kind of progress and work in that direction. I have kind of always had a challenge. I've always wrestled with the concept of God, with the idea of God, with a lot of the foundational beliefs of Christianity. And the more that I pursued that and really dug in and researched these things and these topics, the more I actually moved away from my spiritual belief. So at this point, I don't really have any kind of specific religious belief to which I adhere. McCall is still much more ingrained in a spiritual reality and living in that way. So we've been on a journey, we've been on a path, and through it all, again, it's only brought us closer and closer together, because we've been able to give each other the freedom to believe what we will and to express it to each other, so that there's no threat of doubts or, there's my lack of faith at this point has not in any way threatened her in her own ability to have faith or to explore that spiritual realm. And I think that works for us.
And in fact, I'd like to tell you a quick little story on one of our first dates, which was just a lunch break at work. we were walking to go to Tips.
Okay.
And Kyle said something along the line of, do you believe in God? No, do you believe in Jesus?
Oh yeah. No. Okay. So I have a better memory than McCall. So this was actually after we had parked my car not far from her home, and we're actually walking back to her house, to her apartment.
Okay.
And I asked her, do you believe in Jesus Christ as your personal savior?
And I went, like my Lord and Savior?
Yeah,
or
yeah, I guess I
something?
said.
You said you believe in Jesus. And I was
Yes.
like, is he my Lord and Savior or some S?
And I was like, well, yeah.
And I said, to be honest, I love the idea of Christ and Jesus and the Trinity, but Christians are my Achilles heel. Like, I cannot stand the people who like him. And don't want to be one of them. And I had lots of experiences with the preacher on the green telling everybody they're going to hell. And I've heard a lot of the fire and brimstone message, and never really considered like historical or even geological facts that are contained in Scripture, because Christians grossed me out, and I didn't want to be a part of it. So I never really sought that. I grew up at a school, at a temple, in a Hebrew school. My next door neighbors that raised me, because I was raised by a single mother who really struggles with addiction and alcoholism. And so my next door neighbors were Black Jehovah Witnesses and Seventh-day Adventists. And those are the people I hung out with and I would go to church with. When my mom was sober in between her relapses, we attended a Unitarian church, and that resonated with me. But the only way I knew about Jesus, other than when somebody stubbed their toes and said Jesus Christ, was from a play that I had done there at the Unitarian church, Jesus Christ Superstar and Godspell. So that's how I learned the Gospels, as entertainment almost, not as history. But when I met Kyle and we had that conversation, and I later found out he just wanted to make sure I had, what'd you call it?
Well, yeah, it's an old phrase from my youth, fire insurance.
So if we did anything premaritally, like I wasn't going to burn or something?
Well, I mean, I feel like in some ways in my youth and immaturity, you know, my priorities were really not, you know, I didn't have them aligned, I don't think, well with you know, the concerns of what they should be. So yeah, it was like I felt like I just needed to get her over this finish line, like this threshold of just say the magic words to save your soul, and then we're good. As opposed to really investing in her as a person, or caring about who she is and making, you know, this life as good as it can be. It was like, let me just make sure that she doesn't go to hell for all eternity. And that just seemed like, I don't know, in retrospect, it seems like it's trying to get to a finish line without really understanding, you know, what is the path there. Right. Yeah, like what is the meaning of that path?
So that conversation evolved into me finding out that his father teaches at a seminary, teaches pastors to be pastors. And I said, you know, I'd be really interested in where kind of what I said was the freaks of LA go. Like, where does the dude who was addicted to meth and heroin for years and he was in jail and he found God, where does he go with a bunch of tattoos and his bike on a Sunday? So, I want to check that place out.
Right.
So yeah, I asked for, I actually went to my dad and I said, hey, do you know of any churches out here? And one of the things that I've always found, and this is like globally, because my dad teaches people to be pastors who then go out into the world and become pastors. Anywhere we go, he's recognized. Dr. Lawrence, Dr. Mm-hmm. Lawrence. And like in Europe when we travel, people would know who he is. So anywhere I went, it felt like there was this reputation or this
expectation.
Yeah, there was
preceded you.
Yes. And so I said to him, I'm interested in a church where nobody knows who you are. And so he gave me a recommendation for this church here in Los Angeles called Mosaic. And he said, nobody there knows who I am. And so we went there.
And all I heard is it's at Prince's nightclub downtown. Those were the words I heard. And I was like, hell yeah, I love Prince. Let's go. I walk in, it smells like throw up and beer and alcohol.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there were people partying there hours before.
Right.
And I felt comfortable enough to be present enough to hear the message that was given. And the message that was given was, like a flower, when you're cut off from your source, that even if you look great in your vase by yourself, you look beautiful, it's that pinnacle of your moment, you're slowly withering and dying. And my soul felt like it had been withering and dying, and I didn't know how to feed it. So my whole life, I've been on a kind of a spiritual quest. I participate in a 12-step program called Al-Anon, which is for the families and friends of people affected by alcoholism, that it's a family disease. And being raised by an alcoholic, I learned a lot of the isms that alcoholics experience without the craving and the escape of alcohol. And in those 12 steps, after you admit you're powerless and your life is unmanageable, in step 1, step 2 is come to believe in a power greater than yourself that can restore you to sanity. That I wrestled with, but it was step 3 that said, turn your life and your will over to the God of your understanding. And I'm like, wait, is that Buddha? Is that Jah? Is that Krishna? Is that Jesus? Is that Yahweh? Like, what? I don't have a God of my understanding. So I have been on a perpetual journey trying to find my God, trying to develop, I call him Mr. Potato Head, because he's got parts of all the faith journeys I've explored. And now I'm doing this podcast where you and I met, Dennis, called Unboxing God, and just exploring different faiths, different religions, Stoicism, mysticism. What's God's name? How do people experience God? Where do they experience God? And Kyle, who now you'd consider yourself an atheist, right?
Yeah.
He's my editor and helps me with research. And so we get now to have these conversations kind of where the Venn diagram of all faiths and none overlap, kind of the perennial wisdom and truths.
Yeah, and like, so you guys unpacked a lot. In my platform, this platform with Dynamic Dad and Magnificent Moms, we talk about the trauma in the house. And so when you guys unpack on that, that's what you're talking about. A lot of trauma has developed over the years, and you guys have, church has become something that you forced away from because of different things that you were told and that you've seen. You don't want to be involved with anymore. Kyle grew up in a parents where he has a father and brothers who are ministers. So he's like, I don't want that route. That's not going to be for me. I don't want to be a minister. I'm paving my own way. And that's what a lot of people struggle with in this stage. So you guys exposed, even when you talk about your parents, McCall, about the traumas that you faced, and then you went through this 12-step. A lot of people don't recognize that. My father was addicted to drugs, right? So there's programs out there for me that if I wanted to, can go to us because I was affected by that. But people don't realize that. And especially in the Black community, that's not even raised to us.
Agreed.
That's not even brought to us, because if that was, there would be a lot of programs in the Black communities to help them, and also services for them to go to school. There's even grant money out there for things like this.
Well, and I think there's a big misperception. Now I think we're really circling in on the conversation, right?
Oh yeah.
And I think there's this big push right now for the defund police, right? And I think there's a big misperception about what that means. And I think the programs that you're talking about, if we could redirect that money that is going into military vehicles and
guns,
and yes, automatic
bulletproof
weapons
vests,
or semi-automatic weapons for the police, and redirect that into community programs
and social work services
that would provide resources for people in communities that really need them and would really benefit from them. Less policing, more resources, feels like that's a solution that would really help those communities. And then when those communities do better, the surrounding city does better, the surrounding area does better. I mean, you're talking about a ripple effect that I think would have a tremendous impact across regions of the country and eventually nationwide.
But you know what, Kyle, the things that you just said, those are things that have been said over years by not just people of color, but just people in general that have a general concern for the community. But you
You're
know,
But
right.
let's be honest, Dennis, mostly by people of color.
right? But you
Because
know what the problem with that is? The system does not want those things to happen for the people of color.
Right.
exactly.
Therefore, they're
Which
not
is
going to
why.
happen. They're not going to happen because we all know it's plain to see the problem. It's plain to see the solution. People say, well, what is the solution? What is the solution? It's not hard. The solution is right in front of your face. Give
No,
them the resources.
the problem is that I'll talk from my own personal experience.
Oh, of course.
I benefited. Let me be honest. I have a huge backpack that is invisible to me even
Yeah,
of white privilege.
right.
The fact that when I get pulled over, I can get pissed and not scared at all and backtalk and not be worried.
But you know that, and you know it as soon as you.
But I don't know that I did for too long because I was raised in a Black neighborhood and with very close, intimate friends that I considered family that didn't look like my skin color. I thought I was colorblind. But I was also blind to true systemic racism and how I benefit from it because I didn't want to, maybe couldn't quite see it yet.
I really believe that race permeates every aspect of American life.
Oh, definitely.
And the
Definitely.
people who but white people are like fish in the ocean.
Right.
And we just don't see race permeating everything because it's just the water in which we're swimming. And I feel like people of color are like marine biologists wearing scuba gear, hyper aware of race all around them, studying all these fish who don't seem to know what's going on. And yet we're the ones who created the system, built
Benefit
it
from
to
it.
our benefit.
Right.
And then somehow became blind to it completely.
And twist and turn it so maybe it's a little more palatable.
Yeah,
so
and-
that we don't own slaves, but let's put them in jail.
When they gave the word to design who white people are, because before they were Irish, they were European, they were Polish. You guys were labeled by the country that you came from, just like we were African, whatever. So then when they labeled, okay, we have to make a separate of this. So we give you white. With privileges. We make up laws, guidelines for white people, not for the European, not for the Asian, but for white people. A name that was given with privileges, laws, and rules that were given. So when that happened, everybody else had no chance. No chance.
But just like Jane Elliott says, I'm not white. I just have less pigment than you do. I mean, we're.
But see, and we both understand that, and those who understand that. But to make it easier for them to get those privileges, I put a label there, and I put rules behind it. So I don't care what you say, what you are and what you're not. Under this label and under these rules applies.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
You can jump out of it all you want. You can go over there all you want and mix with somebody else, but it still applies because of the color of your skin. Yeah. Because we labeled you white. So
exactly.
It doesn't apply, like, and that's what I want to talk to you about, McCall, when you said you grew up in the Black community now, and you thought that you would marry a Black man or you'd be involved with a Black man in the rest of your life, and you have children by a Black man. So how did you think about that if you did have, as being a white woman, having these, the background, what would you think would have happened if you had a mixed child? How would you have handled that? Because that's a whole nother issue.
Well, I remember at the turn of 2000, there was like a Time magazine cover that had the face of the millennium, and it was perfectly designed by a computer to represent the percentages of people that are represented in the world, 0.3 Pacific Islanders or whatever. And the face was stunning. And I admit, I do have a racial bias against white people. And that's racist, kind of. Like, old white men freak me out. And that, as you said earlier, just like we pass trauma on that we experience, like, I don't believe anybody anywhere has not been affected by the disease of addiction and alcoholism. I just don't think it's possible. I think if you shake any family tree hard enough, some drunk or addict falls out. And even if your parents aren't drinkers or drug doers, very against it. If their parents were, they learned some of those isms, that reactive, placating, hypervigilance, trying to read the room to know how to behave. And we pass that on to our kids. I think racism is the same. And so really what I want to do is learn how to get past the Robin DiAngelo white fragility idea into actions where I can affect my even small realm of influence. And the ones I influence the most are we have a 12-year-old and a 14-year-old.
Yeah,
And
I
if
was going to show that picture if you didn't mind. I was going to show that picture if you guys didn't mind.
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll do that in a little bit later on as we go on. I'll pop off and I'll pull that picture up and you guys can talk about that.
But I mean, just to amplify, I think what McCall is saying here, racism is so much more insidious than just if it's present in the family home, it will be picked up. It doesn't have to be present. First of all, I think if it's a white family, there's some level of racism probably
Inherent.
present, implicit bias, etc. But the pop culture of the United States of America elevates white people, denigrates
Education. How
people
about
of color.
textbooks? Not just pulp culture,
Yeah, we
but
talk about the education system and we talk about the history. It doesn't give me any pride in when I look at the history of America because there's nothing in there about that. When they show a field with people picking cotton, that's not gonna give me any pride if that's the only thing you talk about. So when we talk about the wars that's been fought, World War II, Korean War, with everything, there's nothing about what we did. But if those who study true history would know that if it wasn't for a lot of black infantries, there would have been a lot of different things going on in this America right now.
Right, and when we do put the spotlight on those issues or those events or whatever, then we separate it and call it Black history.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly.
As though it's not part of our collective history as a country.
It's one history. It's history.
It's one, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been trying at least to start to integrate other histories into what I'm learning about and learning about some of these things that you're talking about. And I just, but that's what I'm saying about the insidiousness of racism, where it's in the culture, whether we know it or not, whether we recognize it or not. It's just in how people are represented or not represented. And I think we're starting to see that become a point of focus. We're starting to turn the corner on that a little bit, but it's 2020. And this has been going on since our history has began. And you know, when people want to not acknowledge the fact that we basically built this country on the backs of Black people and free labor, and then made a promise regarding land, and then failed to honor that promise, and then never really dealt with it. I honestly believe that, okay, so we wrote slavery into the Constitution, that we had an opportunity there to do the right thing, we failed. We had the Civil War. At the end of the Civil War, we had an opportunity there to do the right thing, we failed again. Then we got into Vietnam. I really believe, or actually, we can go to World War I, World War II, Black soldiers going, risking their lives, dying on the battlefield, bleeding out, coming home, and then not having access to the GI Bill. Not being able to partake in
get a house.
The redlining, not being able to take part in the same system that the whites were now benefiting from. Then we go to Vietnam. I honestly believe we got into Vietnam in a lot of ways out of racism because the French were in there fighting this war, and then we kind of came in and took over while the Vietnamese were fighting for their independence, which we had been doing 200 years before. Now, if the roles were reversed and the Vietnamese were invading the French, whose side would we have been on? You know, so I feel like there was a racism involved in Vietnam and the getting into that war. And then also after the Vietnam War, it was the same thing with World War II. Black soldiers coming home and not having the same rights and privileges and being respected in the same way. You know, and so that we've had all these opportunities where we could have done something or taken some actions or in some way just said, okay, we acknowledge, like and now there is the just get over it effect. Everyone wants to say slavery was hundreds of years ago. Just get over it.
I didn't do it.
But see, the thing is this, Kyle, if I can cut you off, when you go that far to say that, they want us to get over slavery, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I heard you one of you said that in Jewish background,
mm-hmm.
we can't get over the Holocaust.
Right. Yes, exactly right.
We can't talk about that. If we talk about the Holocaust, then it's like, what do you think you're doing? Who do you think you are? But you can't talk about slavery. You can talk about slavery all day, and it's like it's not offending anybody. Come on, what are you talking about, buddy? But you talk about Jewish. If we talk about Jewish, you got to really talk about the history of the Jews. They don't want to talk about the real history of the Jews. So therefore, it's a hypocritical statement because they don't want to talk about the bloodline, who the real Jews were. So it's a hypocritical statement when you talk about the Jews because they want to talk about who they took over. That's a whole nother issue when we talk about religion. We go to a whole nother bloodline, who the Jews, why Hitler really wanted to kill his own people.
But since we're all parents, let's think about our kids. Let's think about, Kyle, and you were talking about history. What is taught to my kids in history books? If my child wants to be a doctor, I just saw a page out of a book written in 1987 that goes through cultural and race differences in medical experience.
Wow. Oh yeah, that's a whole nother step.
That it literally said a Black person experiences pain differently than a white person.
But they were
in 87. That is what we are teaching people.
Yeah.
So that's education. That's history. What about religion? What about any church I take my kid to? Chances are, when they look up at the wall, they see a Caucasian Jesus, and that's just ridiculous.
But that goes back to the word that you said earlier, and I'm gonna let Josephine jump in on this because I had to do something right quick. But that goes back to you earlier when you said, Kyle asked you about Jesus Christ. You said the Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. It automatically struck a chord in you when you use that word Lord and Savior because that's the word that was pushed onto the slavery, that this is your Lord and Savior, and that you had to respect and honor that Lord and Savior. And so I'll let Josephine and you guys handle that. I'm going to jump out. I just wanted to tease that a little bit because then I want you to answer the question, when we talk about race and parenting, what do you say to your child to help them deal with this everyday lifestyle? So I'll leave you guys with that to talk about. I'll be right back.
That is prickly, but more than anything else, I think we just don't sugarcoat, and we don't really, I don't protect my kids. I don't from ideas. I don't have a curtain, that falls when something that is uncomfortable or whatever.
Kyle was in the car taking our son, who was 8 or 9, to school one day, and on NPR they were talking about the stock market. Kyle literally took the time to explain the stock market to my son, who then got involved in buying stock.
Wow.
But that's that's a fairly innocuous example. Like, oh, I'm not going to turn off the financials just because they come on, or I'm not going to disregard his question and because it's long and drawn out and boring to explain the stock market to somebody, especially when you maybe don't have the best understanding of what it is yourself. But it could have been stories about Flannel Castile or genocide in a far-off country or sexual assault or whatever it is. I didn't turn it off because I wanted them to have an idea of what the world is actually like.
And to know they can ask us questions about things we don't even know about. And that together we can research it and ask other people, that we don't have to be the end of knowledge, that there are resources out there that you can tap into, human beings that you can have conversations and connection with and find answers. And we really encourage that. And I hope we also symbolize it, embolize it.
I think we're working very hard to model the kind of behavior and attitudes for our children that we want them to carry out into the world that we believe will make a positive impact. Like my son has started listening to rap over the last, 6 months or so. Mm-hmm. And so we had to have a conversation about the N-word. because just because it appears
In
in
the lyrics.
songs that you're listening to does not mean that even in singing along with the song, you have any kind of access to that word. And that can be confusing, I suppose. But I said to him, look, you don't even have to understand. And you might hear somebody say, well, why is that fair? Why is it fair for them to use that word but not us? You don't. First of all, so there was a breakdown of, let's understand what this word means, what it has come to represent, how it has been used as a weapon against people, and how hurtful it is. And we don't need to concern ourselves with why we can't use this word. We just need to respect that when we hear this word is
if it's hurtful to others, you don't need to use it, period. There's other words, better and more descriptive things you can say.
Here's one word that you don't ever have to use, no matter what.
Well, there's more than one.
But in this specific example, here's one. Right. Never ever say it for any reason. There's no reason to. Right. We have ways of expressing that we are talking about this word without having to vocalize it. And I was like, look, you say that one time because he plays a lot of online games. You drop that word one time and somebody is recording that, and that is now, that can be taken out of context, or even in context. But what is the context when it's okay?
My husband read, was it Tom Sawyer, right? Or Huck Finn?
My daughter wanted me. We sat down to start reading To Kill a Mockingbird together.
My favorite book.
And I was reading it out loud.
My daughter's name is Harper, by the way.
And I honestly had to stop. I don't know if it was the right decision. I still kind of wonder about this, but I just couldn't sit and read this book to her, saying this word over and over again. And I was like, okay, so do I just say the N word? But sometimes they say Negro, and sometimes, and so I was like, I eventually I had to put it down.
So let me say, from coming from a Black person, I'm glad that you are aware of that. So in our community, it has two connotations. When there's the ER form, which is definitely a derogatory, and the GA, which is a term of endearment, which we say among each other. Yeah. So that's mostly when you hear the rap people, when they say the GA, but the ER is off limits to any Caucasian person. Even the GA, let me give you an example. My sons grew up around multicultural people, and they used to bring their friends over. Now, I'm a civil rights baby, born and raised in Alabama, and they would bring all Tongans, Hawaiians, Asians, white people, Puerto Rican. My house was the Rainbow Coalition. So, and I would hear them talking among each other, GA this and GA that, and I was like, I pulled my sons to the side. I was like, whoa! I kept hearing that N word, and I was like, do they know your mama was born and raised during the 60s? They said, Mom, listen, we have taken the power away from that word, because I taught my word that the original meaning is an ancient Kemetic word. It means king, but during the course of history, it was reversed. So they said, Mom, we don't give any power to that word. And then I sat and I thought about it for them. They're 29 and 31 now. So for their generation, they took away the power and the hurtful and the pain from it. But for me, kept hearing them, like white people or different nationalities, to say it over and over again, the sting of it from triggers from in the 60s, seeing the Klan and Sheets, that still triggered me. Yeah. So I understood my son was saying, but I understand you have to understand me and the pain and the generation before me. So that's why we have to be cautious of that word. And I want to jump off of that and get on to this topic. Your family is affluent and influential, and on that platform, I want to ask this question: that term evangelical. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it to anyone else, but to me, that's a coded term. I lived in Texas for about 15 years. I'm very familiar with Dallas Theological Seminary and things of that nature. But the church is one of the most racist institutions. I'm gonna be real.
I think the government and church, yeah, I think that is who gives the power to the system, and racism benefits the people in charge of those systems.
Yeah.
And here lately, well, years ago, a lot of Black people have supported a lot of white evangelicals. I ain't gonna name them. I'm sure you know who I'm talking about. But they have been silent doing a lot of things that have gone on. And I've been frustrated because, you know, I, for one, have been up under these people's ministries and supported them. And I'm like, why are they silent? Why are they not saying anything? You know, that vexed my spirit. And then when they have said something, it was like, that ain't quite right. If you got all these Black people sitting up under your ministry, you can surely, okay, let me know how you truly feel about Black people. I need to know if you see me as your equal. You understand what I'm saying? But then my current pastor, he said, well, sometimes, Sister Jackson, well, maybe they don't need to say anything. Maybe some of them don't. Every person that has a platform don't need to speak right now. Some people do need to be quiet. And I thought about that. But what I see now happening is that how the Holy Spirit is exposing the heart of covert racist people.
Yeah.
And on all platforms.
See, honestly, covert, like obvious racists, like bad people who dislike people just because of the skin color they perceive. I think they're closer to improvement.
They're authentic.
Than somebody like I have been my whole life, kind of being colorblind, and we're just the same. Why are you making a big deal about it? Like, I don't see that. I wouldn't let that go down. I'm the girl who would go and push Chauvin off George's neck. Like that. It's the white fragility idea.
Yes.
That how about The Blind Side, the movie The Blind Side, or The Green Book? Like, how about these whitewashed versions of Black and white understanding and bonding and belonging that are what my kids are seeing?
Well, and so here, what I was getting to before, I want to come back to now, because in this kind of way that we show racial reconciliation between like two people, like in Green Book, and then hold that up as an example of, see, racism has been resolved. And that's where, you know, the get over it comes from.
Or in The Blind Side, we can help these people.
Sure. But my point is that we have never had a real confrontation with our racial history, an acknowledgement of what we've done, some sort of reconciliation for it. And that's how you move on. We want to get the other side of all the hard work without doing any of the hard work. And the hard work is having these conversations, is making an acknowledgement. And a lot of that is going to have to be led by the church, by the government, because these are the major institutions that have kind of perpetuated and propped up the racist system. And so they're going to have to be instrumental in pulling it down. And it might be right for white evangelicals or a white pastor to not say something because they want to listen. But what they need to do is be very vocal about the fact that they're not going to be saying anything and that they're going to be listening. And they need to instruct their followers to do the same. If you heard a prominent white evangelical leader stand up and say, okay, unequivocally, Black Lives Matter. Also, I'm not going to say anything else because I'm going to make it my business to listen to Black leaders, to educate myself, to read books, et cetera, et cetera. And I encourage all of you to do the exact same thing. Here's the list that I'm reading. I want you to read at least one of these if you're in my congregation. Here are the people I'm listening to. Start following one of these podcasters. Start following one of these people on Twitter or whatever. If there was this movement to spread that kind of message, then we might start seeing some real differences. Then you might start believing that these evangelicals are on your side and not just kind of caping for the systemic racist system that they have, while kind of paying lip service to we need to do better. And it's like, well, what does that mean? What does we need to do better? Like, what platitudes are not getting us anywhere. We need more. And we need white people especially to stand up and start elevating these other voices and redirecting questions to them, to other people or whatever. I think I think in the white community, there's a lot of like, my parents weren't racist. We didn't own slaves. This has nothing to do with me, which is an excuse to say, I don't have to deal with racial reconciliation because it's uncomfortable.
Right.
And it makes me feel bad. And as such, I want nothing to do with it. So I'm just going to say it has nothing to do with me, and I'll leave it to everybody else to resolve. But again, who created the system? Who perpetuates it? Who swims in it without even realizing that they're in the water? It's us. Mm-hmm. But we're not immune to race.
And what I'm seeing right now is a lot of my friends that are white and woke, I guess, are blocking people that agree, that feel differently, instead of looking for some overlap. I'm really trying to do my own, so that I'm passionate to somebody that I disagree with in order to even have a small influence.
Well, when you talk about that, I mean, you and Kyle are, I'm not going to say this such a, but small percentage.
Yeah.
When you're talking being open-minded, you guys are very open-minded about a lot of different things. So let's be honest about that. Yeah. So if you've been raised in a system to teach you to think this one way, white privilege, and that you are superior. And when we talk about the history, I'm 53 years old. Josephine has just turned her luxurious in her 60s. She's, her beautiful years of 60s.
Oh my goodness gracious. You look terrific.
So when we talk about that, we look about how long that is because of separate but equal. We're just coming out of that. That's only 50 years old. So that's still young.
Yeah.
So we talk about how far America has come. They've come 50 years of being separate but equal. 50 years. Let's be honest about that. So if I'm still learning at 50-something years old, I'm still going to the second stage of my life. I'm in the second half of my life where I'm matured now. I know how to make better decisions. I'm more of looking at things in a different light. How can you expect 50 years for all this to develop to where we're seeing how far we come? Yes, technology has made advancements, and there's more advancements in technology that we realize that's going on right here in front of us. But we cannot expect a people, let's be honest. When my grandfather, who went through the same systems, had no privilege at all, had a third grade education, and was taught that if he tried to read, he would be killed. Whereas your grandfather opened up any book he wanted to read.
And become a doctor.
Not only could open up the book, but he could come and bring it to you and say, "Child, sit on my lap, let me read you this book."
Yeah.
We're talking about the trauma in the house, the traumatic experience that we've all dealt with.
Then, those are the people then who write the books.
Exactly.
Right.
They're dictating every area of how I live my life, how I see myself. And when I say myself, I'm talking about the younger generation who don't even want to go back into a history book. And why should they? Because they're not going to see anything that's going to talk about them. So even in Dynamic Dads and Magnificent Moms, we have took it upon ourselves. That is a part of history that we have to teach. We have to, and be unapologetic for it. Because in the years they say, "Oh, if you're going to do that in your program, then you're separating yourself." Now, don't try to flip the racism over because I want to teach my people about who we are. If they don't know, if I don't teach them, who's going to tell them? You're not going to tell them, but then you don't want me to tell them.
Right.
Well, speaking.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Dennis. Well, speaking of books, you know, it was Dodge that says if you want to keep an end from knowing something, you put it in a book. And I don't know if you guys have seen the movie The Birth of a Nation, when Nate Park, when he went into the library and all these books, like he was enamored with them. And the myth, don't worry about them. You know, they don't pay no attention to them. So it's knowledge that has been kept within the books, and that's why education has always been at the bottom rung for people within our community. But sharing my own personal story, when I was in college, almost 40 some decades. I mean, well, yeah. When I graduated in '78, so I went to college, and I started at a college, but then I transferred because of at a public white college that I would get better training. That was the worst mistake I made. But in there, I experienced racism. I wanted to become a physician. And I ended up quitting because it was only 2 black females and 1 black male. And my would tell me, he would humiliate me in class every day and said, "You would never become a doctor." You know, we would be in organic chemistry, and he would like, "Well, in organic chemistry."
Yeah.
And all my white peers, classmates, they would just put their heads down because they knew what he was doing. I reported him. They didn't do anything because he was tenured. And I ended up dropping out of doctor because of what I allowed to believe. Even, let me bring it back between me and Dennis, even though if I
Yeah, we're having problems with the internet right now. I know we're in the peak of
black
the.
woman, anything you want to say, in a sense, but if I say the exact same thing, I'm angry. Even as a woman, there's more traumatic effects that we're in society. We're still cast around at man, even though we're basically the cradle. We've held this society up. We've nursed you guys kids, we cooking, but we even our beauty, this and that, and now people are paying thousands to look like us. So where does the black woman this society? You know, being dark skinned, growing up in the South, the paper sack test. I tell people about that. I was not considered beauty and pass the paper sack test. You know, and so it's so much trauma that we have to deal with in our community, and we need to honest discussions, and let's talk about white fragility. That's something that we, and just because we like you use the word confrontational, a lot of people see me as being confrontational, but that in the negative narrative, you can confront something without being mean spirited. You can't conquer that you don't confront. So until we put stuff on and be willing to discuss it in safe zones, safe table, go and want to chop people's head off, but still there's war and victory. So until we, black and white people, whatever, we're willing to discuss things, they're not going to change. We'll be here 50 years from now.
Yeah.
So
side of that, I need to teach my children how to the point of inviting critique and feedback from people of color, brown, black, without becoming defensive, and have prejudices that most people, if you're watching some white dude walks on with blue jeans, a cowboy hat, and cowboy boots, most people are going to assume he's going to sing
a country song.
Right. A big black woman walks on.
Oh, here's some soul.
Mahalia Jackson. I'm about to hear a woman belt out.
Here comes Aretha Franklin.
That doesn't mean I'm a horrible bunch black people. I have prejudice and racist instincts because I was raised in a systemic a systematic racist country specifically. So now what as a parent do I do? You know, as I hear so many of my friends who have either mixed or Black kids talk about their responsibility as a parent to teach their children to do in a police encounter. I mean, we've always said,
Yeah, we've
don't
always,
tell my mom, call a lawyer.
lawyer.
We want a lawyer.
That's it.
Don't say anything
Don't
other than I
ever
want a
talk to
lawyer.
the cops. We've taught our kids, don't ever talk to the
But
cops.
I don't need to teach them to put their hands on the wheel and not question.
See, your reality for your son is very different from my reality for sons. Dennis and I have a son. I have two sons, and to think that I have to worry. My sons both live in Texas. Pray about their going out, coming in, when I know what racial profiling is, because it's happened to me when I lived in Texas. They racially profiled me because of the truck I drove, because we can't afford to drive a nice truck or live in a nice home. I worry about my son. So that reality for me and then for you is very different. Another story. I was in a car who happened to be an attorney, and we got pulled over by the cops. She said, "White privilege card."
Hey, let me ask you this question as we go deep into that, and we talk about the race and the parenting, because that's what we're dealing with, when it's the same time. Trying to get our kids to understand that there's two different lives, that you have a privilege and your other, like you said, you have your son who's beginning to deal with rap, listen to rap, and understanding that. And so let me ask you this: how do you explain to him his interactions? How does he interact with other races to where he's not rebellious in the sense that I don't want to be part of the white society, so I'm jumping over here to be a part of them and learn their culture, and then he's coming back in the house and he's acting something that he's not? How do you explain to him that borderline? Like he said, he wanted to use the word nigger, and you're like, hold on, you can't use that word. But if he's trying to find himself in them, that's going to come out. And then also with your daughter, how do you I don't know if you've seen things in the movie Sidney Poitier. Guess who I'm bringing home to dinner? When
Good one.
Yeah, when actually she brought home a black man to dinner, and the whole family was like, "Whoa!"
Right.
So how do you guys deal with these issues now that your children are in those stages where they're interacting with other races? Do you have these talks with them, or is it I guess you guys are open-minded. So do you have these talks with how to deal with them?
I mean, we've not, like, whomever they are spending their time with, we have friends. My diverse. My daughter, she has, for whatever reason, tended to gravitate to girls who look more or less like her.
No, who have big houses and swimming pools, let's be honest.
But so I don't think we're about.
Now, I have Perche and Pazzo.
Oh, right.
I have a single very one is adopted from Africa, and his name's Pazzo. And my daughter became immediately connected at the hip. And PJ is what other people would refer to as loud and boisterous and ballsy as angry. A person can be, for any religion or any sex. She's well educated and speaks. And so I've actually tapped into her on several occasions to have conversations. When he was reading To Kill a Mockingbird, I called her and had a discussion with her. The other thing that I am doing personally now, I don't think White Fragility is the book that all white people should read to understand their own racism, but it is a beautiful lubricant, at least for me, to recognize how much my insistence of colorblindness has kept me from really, truly acknowledging and making changes for myself and influence. So I actually have a reading list for myself and podcasts and movies. I mean, for a good majority of the month, we've only watched movies with really people of color protagonists for me, so that the kids were, that's all that was just a given. If there was a movie, that's the kind of movie we were watching, just so it wasn't unusual. But
I hasten to say that like none of that is like curing racism.
No,
like,
no.
I've seen movies by Spike Lee really making a difference.
That on all the time lately,
but let me ask
has
you this,
really balanced it.
Yeah, but so let me ask you this though. I mean, in this environment right now, it has gotten people to say, "I want to know more." But don't you think? Like I said, I'm 50 years old. When I was in my 20s, I started really getting to find out who I was, because I got to that fork in the road where I was starting to be like my mother, starting to be like my father, when I was trying to find myself.
Right.
And so my first experience going into a library and really digging into who I was, and started learning about Du Bois, Douglas, W. Du Bois and Baldwin and Langston Hughes, Stephen Biko. I can go on with a list of names. I found the books to be brand new at sometimes, even at the college level. I'm cracking over a book and it's brand new. Nobody's touching these books.
Froze. But
I was hanging on. You found books between what?
Well, I'm probably having internet problems, but I'm saying when I went into the library, a lot of the books were brand new. They weren't even opened up. But I'm gonna say it's opened up my eyes to who I am, and so I'm saying now that people are going through this issue with the ethnic group, it's opened up their eyes as white people or anybody. And so when I say 50 years has gone by that we had this Jim Crow law, how does people think that in 2 or 3 months or 6 months, it's automatically going to change? My mindset is, why not 30 years ago? If you're 50-something years old, why did you wait this long to want to find out about what African studies were? You know, the history of African was. Why now? That's what I want to really understand.
Well, I think the why now, there's a lot of reasons for the why now, I think. One is just the ubiquitousness of technology.
In your face video of watching a human being die.
Yeah. But specifically, I think George Floyd triggered this particular moment more so than the countless other bodies of Black men and women who have, been piled up. I read somewhere that it's the slow, methodical taking and casual taking of a life.
For me, it was the hand in the pocket of Chauvin, and it was the Asian police. That was what really did it.
Up until now, it's been a lot of shootings where the horror is fast and it's done.
Yeah, but even with those things being killings, but even with those things being killings, shouldn't that have still warranted to
Shouldn't it what?
But even those being killings, just killings of a Black man, just like when we had the lynchings, when the lynchings in the 60s and 50s.
Yeah, it should have. You're right. It should have.
Still say this is not right. Because Eric Gardner,
I don't know.
Eric Gardner died the same way. He was died by suffocation, and nobody did anything different.
It was Philander that did it for me, not Floyd.
No.
That was my personal.
I'm speaking about, like, I think George Floyd has triggered something in America nationwide.
Right.
Some of it may have
not
been
just America, but I mean,
sure, yeah.
but problem is I want it to be sustained. And how do I not just throw one log onto the fire, but how do I instead of trying to do too much for a short period of time, I'd rather small approaches of education, listening, sharing with people who might be able to listen to me, and sustain it so that we really do. I mean, just registering people to vote who wouldn't normally vote, and educating anybody who will listen to me or respects my voice with not just opinion, but here are facts. What feels right to you? Earlier, I was going to mention one of the small changes I've made is there's a podcast called Black History Year. Is Black history, literally things I didn't know about. Not like just Tulsa, but what is it here? The stadium, Dodger Stadium, that you as a Black, or Central Park,
Right.
or I mean, there are so many.
The numbers are
stories.
countless. The numbers are countless. I mean, inventions. And we even talk about the inventions that we made. It's just,
Yeah.
we're part of history. We're history. We're American history, and so that's just not told. But so we can go on and on. I know you guys. We all been on here for quite some time. We talk about a lot of different issues, and we talk about the trauma. That's basically what we're dealing with, the trauma, the traumatic experience that we've all dealt with each and every day, and not would rather be quiet about. And that's when we say, don't talk about the history of the Blacks, because now it brings up the trauma. Nobody wants to deal with the trauma. Nobody wants to take the responsibility for the trauma that they have caused. And that's what America is constantly saying to Black people. We don't want to deal with the trauma. But then when the Jews, when we talk about them, they so traumatized by it that if you do it, we're about to hang you. We don't care who you are. We're about to come at you. We're about to ostracize you for talking about why we went through what we went through. And you can't compare the two. They're apples and oranges, when reality, when you go back in history, it's the same thing. They got killed because he didn't want their bloodline to continue. And so that's, like I said, we still have to recognize the history. But I just want to thank you guys, and I want to give you the last words. What would you continue to say to your children as far as we talk about race and parenting, and also other people of this, people of color, because that's what we all are, people of color? How should you move forward in this day and time? And I'll let Josephine, if you have something else to say.
My message to my children will be, for the rest of my life, that they need to work, that non-racism is not enough. They need to work toward anti-racism, toward tearing down the system that we built, that was written into the Constitution, that needs to be restructured in a way that is not just, that is equitable, where we, the starting point, we're not given the same starting point. That's just a fact. Whites they start the race from birth in a better position than Black children. And so my message to my children, my message to other white people would be like, we need to recognize this. We need to accept that this is real. This is not about our hurt feelings. This is not about our defensiveness. This is not about—
Learn the facts.
When you're talking about the trauma, the trauma was inflicted on Black bodies by white bodies, and that's the avoidance. We don't want to look in that mirror and realize, maybe it's not me, maybe it's not my parents, maybe it's not my grandparents, but somewhere in my history, or even maybe not my history, but in the history of my race, has been somebody inflicting trauma and torture and damage and murder and rape and all of it on Black people. And so we just need to accept that. We need to internalize that and really face it. And then we need to be open to the conversation so that we can start to move forward, really lay down the groundwork. If we want to get past it, we have a good friend of ours who preached a sermon, and he said, you can't get to it until you go through it. Mm-hmm. We cannot get to racial reconciliation without going through it. And the going through it is going to be really hard and painful, and we're seeing it's what's necessary. It's ripping off that bandage from the wound and really letting it air out.
And for me, I'll use Spider-Man. I think it's Spider-Man.
Yep.
With great power comes great responsibility. And the fact of the matter is, there is white power in this world, that just because of how somebody else sees us, that we have a privilege, and that recognizing it, accepting it, even appreciating it so that we can use it for good. That we have a responsibility to stop. If we see a person of color pulled over and there's more than one police around his car, stop and film it. Yeah. Send it to ACLU. There's an app for that literally, as you're filming it, it's streaming and saving on their cloud, even if the police shut off your phone and broke it. It's there. ACLU has it. If put my white body in the way to protect somebody else. If I'm going to spend an hour listening to a podcast, to consider listening to something that I don't already relate to and about, so that because I think I have power, and therefore I have a responsibility, and I want to embed that in my children so that it's their sphere of influence in even small ways, to start recognizing and dismantling how we operate now.
That's great. That's great. Well, McCall, one thing I want to bring back around to you mentioned earlier about reading a book about white fragility. What tips can you give to me? Because I have friends that when a lot of them see me as confrontational, or well, now I wouldn't say my friends do. My friends know me. People in my arena. How can I deal with that fragility? How can, because I'm getting tired of trying to give them a lesson on something that I think they should take the initiative to learn themselves.
Honestly,
so
what I
what's
think,
that?
I don't think it's your responsibility anymore.
It's not my responsibility anymore. So
you tag in me.
Find a white ally.
If you're on Facebook and someone says something, tag me. Say, come get your girl.
Yeah,
come get one of your own.
These are conversations that we need to be having.
For real.
Right, between you guys, because it's no longer my responsibility.
We
right?
all know about race. It's no longer about Black people needing to educate white people. It's all out there. We need to take over the mantle and do it. I'm
glad to hear y'all say that, because like,
friends,
I can't teach.
Facebook show and tag my ass.
How you spell your first name? Because look,
MCCALL. And you can also go to unboxinggodpodcast.com. And our email is waldolovesme@gmail.com.
Okay.
And yeah. And also, I would like to be able to tap into you if I can for suggestions.
Okay, well, I'm on Facebook, Magnificent Moms. That's my Facebook page, and my real name, Josephine Horace Jackson. Like you see it there. Look me up. So you got a new friend, girl.
Oh, so you're Miss Jackson, not Mama.
Look, and I ain't nasty. I have really enjoyed you guys.
It's a pleasure.
Dennis and I are looking forward to working with you guys. It's good to have our allies who are open-minded and willing to reach and pass the baton, because that's what it's going to take to bring solutions to the round table. Because we're really going to have to be seated at the round table. This movement, and I want to say movement, not protest, not whatever. It's going to have to be right. It can't be about us without us.
I agree.
That's right.
Thank you for letting us walk by your side and for taking the time to talk to us and share yourselves with us.
Yep.
Oh, this ain't the last time you're going to hear from me.
Good.
Yeah, I want to thank you guys for both coming on. Like I said, this is an ongoing discussion that we could have. Hopefully that we could team up and do some great things together in the future. My internet is kind of phasing in and out, so a lot of times you guys were freezing on me. So I don't even know if you guys can really hear me on a consistent basis. But I just, like I said, want to thank you. It's been a great conversation to have with you guys, and we will constantly, blend in with you guys on other different topics. Anytime you want to come back, please text me, let me know. We can come on your podcast, do the same thing. Let's just coordinate with each other. Let's work together outside of this. Me and Josephine are doing some great things outside, so we would love you guys to be a part of that on that discussion. So I'll make sure that we both, help this generation that we're in right now have a better opportunity to advancement, so they're not continuously going around on a merry-go-round. And that's what we keep doing over time, just going to this merry-go-round. We talked about this 50 years ago. Here we are talking about it again. So once again, Dynamic Dash, positive attitude, full of energy and new ideas. And I want to thank you guys for coming on. You guys have a great night.
All right, you too.
Thank you, guys.
Be well.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.